Marcus Delacroix didn't just take photographs. He was the unseen negative to every bright flash of fame. He had perfected the sinister, lucrative art of becoming invisible. 2 decades, 23 years of dedicated, conscienceless stalking had forged him into a phantom of the periphery. His targets weren't just targets. They were the celebrities, politicians, and anyone else unlucky enough to stumble into the public eye and inadvertently invite the scrutiny of his lens. He knew precisely how to melt into the chaotic flow of a crowd, how to vanish behind the geometric safety of a pillar, and how to emerge from shadows like smoke given form, a momentary silent blur before he was gone again. His telephoto lens wasn't a tool. It was an extension of his body, a prosthetic eye that saw only scandal and weakness. His finger on the shutter wasn't a muscle twitch. It was a trigger he pulled without conscience, recording moments that would ignite fires in tabloids across the globe. "They choose this life," he would always rationalize, the phrase worn smooth from years of repetition. It was his daily mantra, the internal defense against the scraps of humanity he sometimes felt dissolving in his cold heart. He'd slide another memory card, heavy with captured shame, across the cluttered desk of his editor at Spotlight Weekly. "The moment they step into the limelight, they forfeit their right to privacy. I'm just documenting what they've already sold." His job, as he saw it, was simply to provide the receipt for the soul bargain these public figures had struck. The financial rewards were not just good, they were exceptional. He had engineered his entire life around the market value of human error. A single compromising photo of a clandestine meeting or a public meltdown could easily buy him 3 months of rent in his sleek, anonymous downtown loft. A video, a captured moment of genuine raw private weakness, a secret meeting, or an emotional breakdown, those transactions could buy him a luxury car. Marcus had trained himself to see human vulnerability as currency, and by that metric he was not just successful, he had become very, very rich. He was an economic predator operating on the fringe of the celebrity ecosystem, trading in guilt, fear, and the inevitable collapse of carefully curated public images. He didn't capture light. He captured the absence of light, and the world paid handsomely for the darkness. He was a wealthy ghost haunting the brightly lit halls of fame, and he wouldn't trade his invisibility for anything. His downtown loft was less a home and more a surveillance command center. The apartment walls were not adorned with art, but were lined floor to ceiling with gear, racks of pristine cameras, specialized lenses, and a constellation of flickering monitors. He tracked social media feeds, police scanners, and encrypted insider tips with the frantic, unwavering dedication of a day trader watching stock prices during a market crash. Sleep was not a necessity. It was an optional surrender, easily sacrificed when a whisper confirmed that a senator's son was rumored to be entering rehab, or when a pop star's marriage was allegedly crumbling. Marcus possessed the terrifying patience of a predator. He would materialize at hospitals, secluded restaurants, guarded private residences, and courthouse steps like a specter, always perfectly timed to be present when people least wanted to be seen.
He had become a custodian of human misery. He'd photographed countless tears, the glitter of saline betrayal on a cheek, the wet tracks of public remorse. He had captured moments of rage, despair, and crushing humiliation, filing them away in digital folders organized with clinical, chilling precision. Political affairs, celebrity breakdowns, family scandals. Each folder represented not just a story, but someone's worst day, their most vulnerable moment, their deepest shame, all meticulously catalogued and transformed into his personal, professional triumph. This meticulous documentation was his dark legacy. The morning everything changed started, ironically, like any other. Senator William Hayes's daughter, Emma, was scheduled to leave the notorious Serenity Hills Treatment Center after a mandated 90-day stay for prescription addiction. Marcus had been camped outside for 3 agonizing days, fueled by caffeine and anticipation, waiting for this exact profitable moment. The other photographers, the hungry pack, as he dismissively labeled them, were there too, corralled like desperate animals behind the facility's wrought iron gates. Marcus, however, was a master strategist. He had positioned himself across the street, a safe, professional distance away, his massive telephoto lens focused with surgical precision on the main entrance. At precisely 9:47 a.m., Emma Hayes emerged, 24 years old, hollow-eyed, clutching a small, pathetic duffel bag. She looked utterly fragile, like glass that had been cracked but not yet fully shattered. Marcus raised his camera. His professional autopilot engaged, and he began shooting. The motor drive whirred like an angry wasp seeking vengeance. Through his viewfinder, he watched Emma's face visibly crumble as her eyes registered the barrage of the pack's flashing lights. She instinctively raised a skeletal hand to shield her eyes from the blinding attack, stumbled slightly, and the first flash hit Marcus like a physical blow. It wasn't the hot pulse of his own camera's flash, but a blinding, disorienting explosion of light from somewhere directly behind him. Then another, and another. He spun around, confusion quickly curdling into gut-wrenching dread, and found himself staring into a dozen lenses pointed directly at him. The faces behind them were unfamiliar, the cameras newer, sleeker, and all focused on him with a chilling, predatory intensity he immediately recognized. Marcus Delacroix, over here! How long have you been stalking the Hayes family? Is it true you broke into their private property last week?
The accusations came from everywhere at once, a deafening, aggressive swarm. The questions were not seeking truth, but eliciting a reaction designed to inflict maximum public damage. Marcus stumbled backward, the sleek, expensive weight of his own camera suddenly alien and heavy in his hands, a weapon turned against its wielder. He tried to physically push through the hostile crowd, but they moved with a coordinated, single-minded focus, following him relentlessly. Their cameras clicked like a legion of snapping jaws, their flashes strobing a relentless, disorienting pattern of invasive demands. The hunter had become the hunted, and the realization hit him like a physical blow to the stomach. "Get away from me!" he shouted, the words weak and desperate, instantly lost in the collective, hungry roar of their journalistic pursuit. He scrambled blindly toward his unmarked car, a fortress of steel and glass that now felt horribly fragile. He fumbled wildly with the keys as the photographers surrounded the vehicle like a swarm of metal insects. They pressed their heavy lenses right up against the windows, the glass distorting their grinning, eager faces, their flashes turning the car's interior into a terrifying, unceasing lightning storm. Marcus slammed the transmission into gear, gunned the engine with a desperate, squealing roar that left a thick patch of rubber on the curb, and tore away from the scene. He watched his rearview mirror, heart hammering against his ribs, as a convoy of sedans and motorcycles immediately peeled out and followed, lights flashing, gaining on him like a pursuing fever dream. Finally reaching his downtown fortress, he didn't just lock his door, he triple-locked his door, turning every deadbolt and chain. He then viciously slammed every blind shut, plunging the apartment into a suffocating, self-imposed darkness. But the terror was no longer confined to the physical world. It was now digital and pervasive. His phone wouldn't stop ringing, a relentless, panicked symphony of unknown numbers, blocked calls, and urgent, aggressive messages from reporters demanding statements about allegations he'd never even heard of. His email inbox, in the space of just 3 short minutes, flooded with interview requests, exorbitant photo offers for his own private files, and a handful of genuine, chilling, legal threats. The world had not just struck back, it had turned his own weapon back on him, and Marcus Delacroix, the invisible ghost, was suddenly, horrifyingly, the most exposed man on Earth. By evening, his photograph, not one of his photographs, but photographs of him, was the lead story on every major news website. They were unflattering, grotesque shots taken from below, showing him running, hiding his face, looking desperate and cornered. The headlines were not just critical, they were merciless and triumphant. Predator paparazzi Marcus Delacroix exposed. The stalker gets stalked inside the mind of a privacy invader. What goes around, karma catches up with notorious celebrity hunter. The stories painted him as a genuine monster. They detailed his cold, clinical methods, his astronomical earnings, and his complete lack of empathy for his long list of subjects. Former targets were quoted extensively, their voices finely amplified, describing the terror he caused, the way he'd made them afraid to leave their homes, to live their lives, to exist without constant vigilance. He was being devoured by the same machine he had spent 2 decades feeding. Days bled into agonizing weeks. The hunters never left. The initial thrilling novelty of his exposure settled into a terrifying permanent siege. They didn't just know his schedule, they were the new authors of it, dictating his every move. They were there when he attempted a desperate hooded run for groceries. They were there, cameras clicking, when he tried to maintain the semblance of normalcy by visiting his aging mother. They were even waiting, silent and patient, when he tried to sneak out for coffee at a panicked 5 a.m. They had telephoto lenses permanently trained on his loft windows, drones hovering like metallic vultures over his building, and inside sources who alerted them to his every pathetic, predictable movement. He stopped leaving the apartment altogether. Food was ordered under fake names. All business was conducted through encrypted channels, and the once vibrant city view was replaced by the drawn, suffocating security of his blinds. But even total withdrawal wasn't enough. They didn't need the outside world to corner him. They took invasive clinical photos right through his windows, capturing him in his most unguarded, most private moments, eating stale cereal in his underwear, his face contorted in silent grief during a phone call with his mother, or simply staring blankly at his own haunted reflection in the bathroom mirror at 3 a.m. The true horror wasn't the violation itself, but the searing, inescapable realization of what he had been stealing from people all those years. It wasn't just their privacy, a flimsy legal concept. It was their fundamental sense of safety, their ability to exist as complex human beings rather than mere commodities to be consumed. He had stripped them of their right to ordinary grief, authentic joy, and moments of simple existence without the constant pressure of performance or defense. He had been a thief of dignity. Sitting alone in the suffocating darkness of his apartment one night, Marcus pulled up his digital feed. He scrolled through the latest batch of invasive photographs of himself, the grainy, embarrassing proof of his fear, his isolation, his breakdown. In that terrible, hyper-exposed moment, Marcus Delacroix finally understood the weight of every tear he'd ever captured, every fleeting moment of anguish he'd ruthlessly commodified, every life he had made smaller and darker by his predatory presence. The money he had made felt like ash, tainted by the silent screams locked within those digital folders. Outside his window, low and close, a sudden, blinding camera flash ignited the darkness of the room, a brief, violent scar of light that etched terror onto his retinas. Marcus didn't flinch. He didn't jump. He didn't even reach for the blinds. He simply closed his laptop, shutting the door on the last piece of his old life, and sat in the profound, sudden silence. He was Marcus Delacroix, the apex predator of vulnerability, and he now knew with bone-deep terminal certainty what it meant to be hunted. He realized, in that final, terrible instant, the ultimate, inescapable truth that the predator and the prey had never been separate entities, but merely two roles played by the same wounded animal, perpetually caught in an identical trap of fear, shame, and exposure. His punishment was simply a perfect, brutal symmetry. He opened his eyes in the gloom, no longer looking out, but staring inward at the wreckage of his own soul. He had earned his spotlight.